TIG welding is one of the most difficult and probably frustrating things that you're gonna ever do if you actually try to weld. Today, we're gonna TIG weld this aluminum John boat, and I'm gonna take you along and show you how I do it on a step-by-step process that hopefully makes it easier for you to do and can get you fixing these little John boats in no time at all. Stay tuned, we're gonna have fun today. It's been a while since we've been back in here doing the John boat. I introduced my Eastwood TIG welder over there. That is a welder that we purchased, geez, it had to have been about a month ago. I think I purchased that, month and a half. And a lot of life got in the way, a lot of practicing got in the way because I am not 100% adept at welding aluminum. I was a welder for about 2 years and a heavy construction equipment. I used a lot of the really big, heavy MIG welders for repairing buckets and stuff like that. So I do have welding experience. When it comes to aluminum, I do not have experience doing aluminum. I did do a lot of gas brake, gas welding, which is kind of close to the concept, but never aluminum. So a lot of that time frame in this month was used out here, me practicing welding on here, blowing some bigger holes into this boat. Yes, I did blow a massive hole in here when I was doing the repair. It's part of welding, it's part of learning. It's gonna happen. You gotta find a way to work through it and figure out how to actually fix it. So I'll kind of talk about what I did over there and how I'm gonna actually fix it, or actually how I did fix it, because it is 90% fixed, but we'll go over right now. But let's get down to the basics. What do you actually need to weld an aluminum John boat like this? Like I said, I introduced the welder. I'll put a link to the video right over here that actually introduced my Eastwood welder. What that is the Eastwood AC/DC TIG 200. It is not their bottom of the line welder. It is their entry-level TIG welder. What that means is it doesn't have the digital display. It's just manual dials on it, but it's more than capable of doing an aluminum welding like this. And I think up to 3/8 inch steel that'll weld. So it's a really good aluminum welder that is available from Eastwood. I'll put a link to the Eastwood welder here on where you can actually purchase one. Keep in mind, any links that I do put in here, I do get a residual feedback on them, so just keep that in mind. But I'll put a link to that, and I'll put a link to everything on here that you actually can use to get started welding on a John boat of your own. So let's get to it really quick and talk about what you're gonna need to weld aluminum, and we'll start with that. Obviously, you're gonna need a helmet. This one is the Arc Captain. It's a, let's even call it an entry level, but it's a really high-end entry level, if you want to call it. It's a relatively decent cost on this one. You don't pay a lot for this one. This one is rated for TIG welding, and that's the caveat to it. If you go to Harbor Freight or any of those other ones, make sure that the helmet you're buying is rated for TIG welding. And the reason is that, especially when it comes to aluminum TIG welding, that arc is a lot finer than what a regular arc one from like a MIG or a stick is going to do. So therefore, the sensitivity level has to be capable of picking up that signal that, yeah, it needs to auto darken, because this is an auto darkening helmet. So keep in mind, the cheaper Harbor Freight ones, they do not have the sensitivity to keep up with arc welding. They're going to protect your eyes, but if you do it long term on them, you're going to end up getting welder's flash on them. They are not fast enough to pick up that arc on there, and you will eventually end up with issues with flash welding. So I will tell you, do not use the cheaper ones. Just make sure that you can weld TIG with it. And I'll put the specs on here and what the flash rate should be, what the change rate should be, because there is a number on that one. I forget off the top of my head. This Arc Captain is capable of doing it. It's got a lot of the adjustment dials on the side of it. It's pretty cool. You can auto change the darkening of the helmet. You can change the sensitivity rate. You can change the, what was the other one on there? Oh, it's for grinding also. You can actually use this as a grinding helmet. I'm not going to use my welding helmet for grinding, because grinding throws sparks. Sparks end up chipping that plastic on there. Before you know it, you got a bunch of little black marks in your welding helmet, and you can't see what you're welding. So I don't use it for grinding. More than welcome to do it if you want to. I just don't. I'll link to this Art Captain on on Amazon. The next thing you're going to need is your filler rod. What I have here are two different flavors of filler rod. What they are is I've got 3/32 filler rod and 1/16 filler rod. There is a rhyme and reason between why I've got the two different sizes. I will go through and cover them when we actually start doing the welding. These are the ER 5356 aluminum rods. This is going to be your filler rod that you're going to need for this boat. And most any other boats you're going to use. Those are the two main filler rods you'll probably be using on anything between a thin little soda can all the way up to an 1/8 inch aluminum. That's going to work. Safety glasses. Wear your safety glasses, because you only get one set of eyeballs, and once they're gone, you're just walking in the dark. Oh. So the other thing you're going to need are dedicated, and I say dedicated stainless steel brushes. When I say dedicated, what that means is these stainless steel brushes touch nothing but aluminum. And I'm not saying touch. I mean, you can obviously go and touch a piece of steel with it. You're not going to be scratching. You are not using these brushes on anything but aluminum. The reason being is if you use these on anything else other than aluminum, you're going to get that steel into the brush. The steel, metal, whatever it is, it's going to get into your weld. It's going to contaminate it. It's going to blow it apart, and it's not going to be good anymore. So stainless steel dedicated brush. I have the tiny little small ones here. I bought these again from Amazon. This is a cheap little packet you can get off of Amazon. They're super cheap, super cheap. So when they're used and gone, toss them. And when you use up all, I think there was 20 of them, get yourself a new set. They're not the strongest in the world as far as flex, but if you're doing something tiny like your rivet holes, these work really good. Also, they sell these at Harbor Freight. I'm sure they have these on Amazon, but this is also a larger stainless steel brush. If you're doing a bigger area, if you're trying to lap something, this is going to get the job done really quick. And if you notice, it is marked aluminum only. So if anybody else in your shop wants to grab this and uses it on steel, it's going to be turned into a smacking brush, because now you can no longer use it on aluminum. I'm going to use it to smack them across the head with it, because it says aluminum only. You're not supposed to use anything else but aluminum. 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 So the other thing you're going to need, and the first items I'm describing here are the necessities on every single one that you're going to be doing, not just this boat, everything. So I have a ton of this isopropyl alcohol on hand. It's not the most ideal cleaning solution, but it is going to work really well. Acetone is really what you want to wipe it down with. Get yourself a thing of acetone and get yourself a rag. Once you've wire brushed your area and you got it super clean, hit it with some acetone to clean it up, to get off all the impurities on it. The big thing you're doing when you're talking about aluminum welding is contamination. Cleanliness is going to dictate your end weld. If it's not clean, it's going to look like garbage. Plain and simple. There is no other way to describe it. You want something that's going to evaporate and dry completely and not leave any residue. Isopropyl alcohol will also do that. We just had a ton of this around, so I'm going to use it up. Oh, I use it for my nails. As my wife's being a wise cracker behind the camera, mentioning the nails. Tungsten that you get, you do need, and I do say you need replacement tungstens. Why? You're going to burn through it. I guarantee you are going to blow through these tungstens when you're learning faster than if you were chewing on a cob of corn and you were eating that sucker down. You are going to burn through them quick because you're learning. And even when you do learn, you're going to dip into that puddle. You're going to throw your filler rod into it. You're going to contaminate them. So for this particular boat, I chose the 1/16 tungsten. This is the blue, 2% lanthanated. I don't know how to say that word. It's something like that. Here, you read it yourself and tell me what it actually says in the comments. Lanthanated. I think I got it that time. But the blue is probably one of the best ones that you can actually get for all around welding. The blue takes a point really good. It's very good at heat control. It really can stand up to that hardcore welding, so get yourself some blue. The welder, when you buy it, comes with 3/32 tungsten, which is great when you're doing 1/8 inch and up, but when you're doing something thin like this John boat, you're gonna need the 1/16 for sure, because 3/32 is too hot. You can't use that. So you need that for sure. Other than that, that is your basic. I have these cleaning discs too. I'll go through the cleaning discs too, because you do need something to clean the paint off and everything else. I did buy these. These are, doesn't even say what they are. They're almost like a Scotch-Brite cleaner. This is gonna clean off all the paint, the rust, everything else really fast, really quick, and not leave a lot of contaminant behind. So I do suggest you get this, get yourself a 4.5 inch angle grinder, and that'll be able to initially prep it. You'll do this, then you'll hit it with your wire, your stainless brush, then you'll hit it with your solution, your acetone, whatever you're using, and that'll be ready to clean. So pick yourself up some of these. Again, I'll link them to it. So now, what are the extras you need? The other thing you really need is a grinding wheel. If you don't have a grinding wheel in the shop, you actually can purchase what I have here, and I got my Dremel here. This tool on the end of my Dremel here, and I'll put a link to it. I'll throw a picture here so you can see it in its raw form. This is a tungsten sharpener that you can put onto your Dremel wheel. What it is it's got all the different sizes on here. You can see all the different sizes it has. That is going to allow you to take your tungsten, jab it in there, spin it real quick, and it'll put the tip onto your tungsten. It's a really cool tool to use. If you have a grinding wheel, you can use a grinding wheel. But again, the caveat with that is, and I got this fly right around me. The caveat with a grinding wheel is the grinding wheel has to be dedicated to tungsten. You can't do anything else on it. If you take a piece of steel to your tungsten grinding wheel, your grinding wheel is useless for tungsten again, because it gets that metal embedded into that stone, and when you take your tungsten and put it to it, you're taking all that metal from the stone and you're jamming it into your tungsten, and that's going to contaminate your weld. So this little tool is pretty cheap. It comes with a little grinding stone on it. It even comes with some replacements in here. I got like 3 other replacements in here for it. This will last me for years before I have to replace it. The other thing is tungsten's really, it's thin. It's hard to spin. So I end up buying this little tool here. What this tool is basically it's a sharpener for your tungsten. And here, I'll even pull out one of my old nasty ones so you can see how I had to practice with it. What you do with this, and it does have a separate collet in here. There's a replaceable collet in here. You need the different collets for your 1/16, your 3/32, but you basically slide it into your collet, tighten it down, and now you got yourself a holder so you can spin your tungsten on your stone, whatever you're doing it, stick it into that hole, and then spin it, and then you'll get your sharpening on it. But obviously that one needs sharpening because I really mashed that sucker into the puddle. This was one of the ones that I used when I was learning how to do it, and I had the settings all wrong on it. So you see all that white garbage on there. I'll kind of cover why that happened in here, and I'll show you how to sharpen with this one. Getting really long-winded here, I'm sorry, but you do need a lot of stuff when you're actually preparing to weld aluminum. I have a snippers. I use that when my tungsten gets nasty and dirty like that. I just get a pair of snippers and crack it off instead of trying to grind all that garbage off of there. It's just not worth it. That's already contaminated. If you try to take it to a wheel and you just sit there and spin it and try to grind that off till it's the same smoothness, you still got contaminants in there. You got to get rid of the contaminants that are on there, so just cut it off and start over. Tungsten's not that expensive. It's cheap if you want to call it relatively what you paid for everything else. It's cheap. I have a pair of needle nose because I usually like to go in there and on my torch just to grab the tungsten out of there once I completely mangle it. So I have a pair of needle nose pliers. And I'll probably show you that when I'm welding how I use it. On this boat, what this is this is a deburring tool. What I use this for is when I'm actually going through and doing my holes. I can get the top part really clean, but the rim of it still has contaminants on it. You can take this into the hole, deburr it, and get it down to that base aluminum metal so you don't have any of that junk contaminating your weld from the inner portion of it. So deburring tools, pretty cheap. I'll put a link to that again also. I do have an air compressor. Yes, I have an air compressor. I think a lot of people probably have air compressors now. If you do have one, pick yourself up a cheap little angle grinder. Go to Harbor Freight or go to your local computer and grab Amazon and get yourself some blue aluminum oxide cleaning pads. This is going to polish really well. If you use the other one to get rid of the paint and you want to polish it up really nice, make sure it's super clean, get yourself a blue one. That's not going to contaminate your area, your aluminum. It's made for aluminum as long as it doesn't have paint. If you take this thing and you grind on the paint and you grind on the aluminum, you're burning your pad's useless again. Only on fresh, clean aluminum for real. I mean, if you end up digging paint up into it, you're going to take your paint and drive it into your bare spot. It's not going to be any good. So
you need the attachment too.
Yeah, you need the attachment too for it. Tony reminded me, you need the attachment for it too. I'll link an attachment to it also. Your local Harbor Freight does sell the discs, the attachment, and even ones for metal you can actually get for there too. It comes in a kit. They're super useful. If you guys do any type of work in the shop, it's a nice thing for cleaning gaskets, whatever you want to do. I have a ton of them around. I love them. Obviously my 4.5-inch angle grinder. I also do have a heavier, I think that's an 80 grit sandpaper. I use that once I'm done to knock it down because no, I'm not perfect. And my aluminum, when you weld these aluminum, I mean, you're filling a lot in there. So I use this to kind of clean it up, make it look a little bit better. I'll start a lot of the times getting rid of the paint with this just because it's super abrasive. Don't go heavy on it because you don't want to be taking aluminum. You don't want to be grinding aluminum away. You just want to be getting paint away of it. So be careful. If you use one of these, just be really careful. Have a light touch. I've been grinding. I have the touch. I know how to get the paint off and not the aluminum. So it's a good thing to have. On this one, again, I have an air compressor. I've shown this tool before. This is my air hammer. It's seen plenty of days. This thing's probably older than my son is right here. Along with that chuck. I use this, these old aluminum rivets, when they're banging around in there, they actually start to cause the boat to divot, to suck in. So when you drill them out, you got like a little concave in there. And trying to get any one of these tools in there, you got to get all the paint out. You got to get all the old JB weld out. You got to get all the old oxidation out. Everything that's in there that's nasty, you've got to clean it out of there. And it is super hard to get in there with any one of these tools to clean it out. So what we did is we flipped the boat over, and my son volunteered to go underneath the boat. And pretty much he just went underneath. He went to each one of the holes. There's a nice flat tip on there that's about the size of the hole in there. You can buy a hammer attachment for these. You can buy all kinds of stuff for it. But he went underneath that and he went to the back side of the hole and he hammered it and me on the top side until I could see it was nice and flush, nice and flat. And that's where we ended it right there. So I could make sure I get a super clean surface in order to do this weld off, because once again, I cannot stress how important cleanliness is to an aluminum weld. If it is not clean, you're not gonna lay down anything on it except for a bunch of boogers. That's all you're gonna lay down, a bunch of black boogers. So I'll put a link to some of these cheap suckers and I'll find a air hammer. Again, Harbor Freight, you can pick these up super cheap at your local Harbor Freights too. Just as cheap off of Amazon. The last thing I'm gonna show you is not necessarily for you, but it's for anybody who wants to actually film your welding. Your GoPro, your DJIs, your cell phones, whatever camera it is, believe it or not, even though it's a camera, you will burn the lens out if you do not have a filter on it. If you take your phone and you go up, if I say I'm welding right here on this pop rivet, if you put your phone that close to it, you're gonna burn the lens out of it, I guarantee it. If you don't do it the first time, within the first 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times you do it, you will burn the lens out of it. That is a bright arc on, regardless of what you're welding, you're gonna burn out the sensor inside of your camera. Protect your camera, protect your goods. What I did, this is just some simple aluminum angle, and you ask yourself, why didn't you weld it? You're showing a welding video. I didn't know how to weld when I welded that one, when I did that one. So this is all pop riveted aluminum. I probably will go through and weld this little jig up. All it is, simply GoPro attachments. There's a rail track in there. This is just 1/8 inch, 16th inch aluminum. And then I had an old helmet that has the shield in it. Simple as that. So I am gonna film the welds here. You'll be looking through this camera, through this lens and filming it. But if you wanna film any of your welding at home, build yourself some sort of contraption or shield it with an old helmet. Even take an old helmet and just hold it behind the old helmet, whoever's doing it, so you don't burn your camera out. So if you see this on camera, that's exactly what it is. It's so you don't burn your camera out, because you are gonna do it if you just go bare camera to your weld. So that's it. Let's get over to the welder and I'll kind of talk through the setup on my welder and how I'm gonna actually weld this one, since I got through the best of all the stuff you need for it. So let's get over to the welder and talk the welder real quick. So we're at the welder right now. Again, this is the Eastwood TIG 200 AC/DC. This is an AC/DC welder. You need AC/DC. You need AC for aluminum. You can't do aluminum without AC. This is a 120, 220 machine. I do have it hooked up to 220. I probably could have did this with 120, but it's kind of pushed the limits of what you can really do with 120. And I have it hooked up to 220 anyway, so I wanted to do 220. I already talked to duty cycles and everything else in the last video. Go watch the last video if you want the introduction on it. I'm talking now settings that we're gonna actually use for this welding job, and what we're actually doing on this welding and where we need to set everything else. So let's just get right down to it. And again, I'll apologize for the length of this video. There's just so much to cover in here when you talk about welding that it is going to be a longer video, but I don't feel as if there's enough TIG welding on aluminum on these small John boats on the internet to really give you this useful information. This very basic beginner type of information, because I had to search so long to learn it, and I'm even a experienced welder, so bear with me on that. So on my machine, this one is super simple, this machine. It's only got the 3 switches, and then it's got the 4 dials on it. You got your foot pedal and your panel control on here. Your foot pedal is going to obviously be your foot pedal, or on my machine I do have the button on it. It'll be for the button, so it's either button, foot pedal. I didn't use the button on here. I'm not a fan of the button on here, simply because the button is on and off. There's no amperage control on there. The foot pedal has your amperage control. You can amp up, amp down. You can control your amps with the foot pedal. Just learn how to use your foot pedal. It's much better, or invest in a trigger that's AC/DC switch. You got to be to AC, and obviously you got to be to TIG. For my power settings, I usually keep it about, I'm going to do my pre-flow and post-flow. Pre-flow is about 0.06 seconds, and my post-flow is going to be right around 6 seconds afterwards. What that means is how much is it going to give you before you strike an arc, and how much is it going to give you for argon after your arc expires. You probably don't have to change them a whole lot. That's probably pretty good for the majority of stuff I'm going to weld with this, so keep that in mind. So you got your 2 settings here. You got your amps and you got your clearance. Your amps is this, you decide how much your amps are on the thickness of your metal. Your amperage is basically going to tell you how much penetration you need. That basically controls the heat and the penetration of it, how much you're going to put into the metal. The clearance on a TIG welder for aluminum is going to depend on how clean or dirty your surface is. Clearance is basically just the cleaning of it. It's trying to get rid of all the oxide that's on the aluminum, and it has a cleaning effect. Clearance, you're putting out, I think it's 3,200 Your heat range is 3200 and your amperage is 1200. So put that into perspective when you actually are going cleaning. And the way that works is it's AC negative and positive. As it's switching back and forth, you get the cleaning effect in one way and you get the amperage penetration the other way. So electrode positive is your cleaning. Electrode negative is your penetration. So keep that in mind. When you're switching your AC current, positive and negative, when you're in cleaning phase, you're putting out 3200. Your heat is much higher than when you're in your penetration phase. So what that basically comes down to is the cleaner your aluminum surface, the less clearance you're actually going to need. And that's pretty much why you really want super clean, because you want to have less cleaning when you're doing this real thin aluminum, because that high heat, by the time it melts off that high heat, that high oxidation, and it comes in for that penetration on there, your aluminum is already so hot that that's when you end up blowing through your aluminum, because you've got so much cleaning action in there to clean away that top layer of oxide, and then your penetration comes in right behind it, and now you've already got super heat because you had such high penetration with your clearance effect being higher, being more positive, that you're so hot already by the time you're ready to penetrate, you're just blasting through it really quick. So clean, clean, clean. Make sure you've got that super clean. So my clearance effect is down to -3. I basically have very quick cleaning process just to get through, get a little bit of cleaning, get whatever oxide is left over that I wasn't able to clean off out of there, and I'm right into my penetration stage. My penetration stage, I'm doing it right around 50 to 60. I'm probably a little bit higher than that, but you're right at that 50, 60 for penetration. Reason you want to have a higher amperage for your penetration is you want to get in quick. You want to melt that puddle fast and you want to move fast. If you have to sit there and concentrate at a lower amperage, you're basically just heating up all that metal that's around it. All that aluminum is heating up. It just soaks, the aluminum just soaks up that heat. So if you're trying to go in there with a lower amperage, you're not just heating up that one spot, you're heating up everything around it. And by the time you finally get to the point where a puddle melts, you're so hot everywhere else that you start chasing holes. So that's why don't be afraid to kick up that amperage a little bit higher so you can get that fast puddle. You want that puddle to form as fast as possible, but not too fast where it's going to blow through. It's a really common, real close consideration there. So right around, I would set it right around like that 50, 55, 60 to start with. And like I said, try to get that puddle quick. Once you get that puddle, start dipping and moving. That's the whole process. Don't stay in one spot real quick. Move. You're moving quick. So that's my settings on my machine. As far as my gas back here, so make sure your flow is right around 15 to 20 and your argon back on your gauge on there. And that's going to be pretty good for helping you clean it. So with that said, like I said, I've got my pedal hooked up, the ground on there. Make sure that ground is super clean. Clean your ground really clean. You want to have a nice, good, clean arc. And then I got my gun ready to go. So let's get to the tungsten and I'll show you how to sharpen a piece of tungsten in order to get started welding. So I'm going to go ahead and sharpen this piece of tungsten I had. Like I said, that is a bad, that's a bad one. That's one that I dipped in too many times. So we're going to get that cleaned. So all I do, I take my cutters and I get and go through and make sure I'm completely through where that is and just snip it off. Make sure it's away from you. Make sure you put glasses on, because the last thing you want is a piece of tungsten in your eye. That is nasty. It's not good. So I've got that bit cleaned off. You can see it's snipped off really well. So now I'm going to grab my Dremel tool. And on the Dremel, I've got, this is a 1/16 filler rod. Now because I cut it with a side cutters, it's not quite round anymore, so I can't get into that 1/16, but it does fit into the 3/32. So what I do is I run it through the 3/32 just to clean off, because when you ever snip it, it gets that little, it squeezes a little bit and it kind of explodes it a little bit. I will clean it up in my 3/32. I'm just spinning the back end. Now I should be able to get it into my 16th. Give it a couple of spins. And it comes out with a nice little point on it. That's what you want to see. Nice sharp point. What that point's going to do is that point right here is going to concentrate that heat into one tiny little spot, and it's going to make that melt really fast to form that puddle really quick, so you can start dipping and moving, dipping and moving, dipping and moving. So sharpen your tungsten. I'm going to save this one for when I dip into it, so I can just switch it out real quick. Let's get to welding. So I'm going to be welding these holes right here first. I got 1, 2, 3, 4 holes that I'm actually going to do. I've done those 4 already. Those are ready to go. So we've already got some prep work started on it, but this is definitely not clean enough to actually go through and to finish welding on it. I'm going to go ahead, clean up real quick on this, and we'll get the welding on it. So first I got my little grinder set up here with no cord on it. Thanks to my son moving home, I've now got a retractable extension cord, which I was too cheap to buy before, so now I have one. So I just got this is a 60 grit on here, so it's not going to do a whole lot. It's just quicker for me. I bought those other ones and I thought I was going to be real cool using them, but I don't have the right adapter for my grinder. I'll figure out what it is and get that and show you next time I weld with them. So we're just going to go with the 60 grit right now, which is what I did for all the other ones. So let's just get to it. I want to get all this garbage cleaned out of here, so I make sure I'm not going to contaminate it. So safety glasses first. Here we go. Okay. I clean a pretty good space around it because when I strike my arc, I like to strike it outside where the metal is thicker and work my way into the hole. So I like to have a nice, good, clean area around it. I'm painting the boat anyway, so I don't care if I do the paint. But if you can see right here, there's a little dent right here. And you can see around the other surfaces here, there's still little pop metals. So I obviously didn't get into that. Grinder wasn't in there enough to be able to clean it. So now I'm going to go through and go ahead and get my little grinder that I showed you and see if I can't wiggle that in there and kind of clean those out too. Like I said, if it's not super clean, it's not going to get a good weld. So I got a fresh disc. Now I'm going to go through these and try to get in there as best as I can. I'm going to jam it in there pretty good. So let's see how we can get it clean. So I like that clean. I'm pretty good. I got in there pretty good on it. So I'm gonna go ahead. I can just take my little tiny wire brush here. I don't want to use the big wire brush because it's too big, and as I'm going back and forth, I might be hitting these two parts, and I really don't want that in my weld. So I'm just going with a little tiny one to really get in there and to clean out the rest of it. And you can kind of, I don't know if you can pick it up on camera, but you can see I'm picking up some more junk out of that weld. Pretty good, pretty clean, but get around it. Look at, see the black stuff that's coming up? That's what you really want. You want that stuff out of there, because that's going to contaminate your weld. But you notice I'm trying to stay away from this painted surface. I really don't want to hit that painted surface with this brush. In hindsight, I probably should have. If you're really worried about hitting the paint when you're scratching this, just make your area wider. I mean, the more clean area you have, it's not going to hurt it. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to take my deburring tool and try to get in here and clean these holes up as best I can. Nice fresh aluminum. Yeah, I am opening that hole up a little bit, but I'm fine with it because I'd rather have clean in a bigger hole than dirty in a smaller hole, because if it's dirty in a smaller hole, you're going to blast that thing wide open, and it's going to be even bigger than that clean hole. So I can't tell you how important it is to keep your hole clean. I'm not loading it up, just enough. Get in there and clean that aluminum. You can see that black gook coming off of there. Pick one more clean spot on the rag. I'm gonna do it one more time because I want it clean. I want my holes clean. Okay. Make sure it's dry. All right, let's get to welding. I got my safety glasses on. I got my welding helmet on. It's all set. I got my rods over here. 3/30 seconds. I'm using 3/30 seconds filler, 1/16 laminate tungsten, and 3/30 seconds filler. Why? Thin metal. Again, I want high penetration, so I'm set at about 55 amps. I got very little clearance effect at like -3, and I'm going to be concentrating a lot of heat really quick. 1/16 rod at that amperage, you're just going to burn through it super fast. It's going to take that puddle. You won't be able to feed it in fast enough to cool that puddle down. And you're going to blow a hole in it. Whenever you're doing these big open gaps like this, you jump up to 3/30 seconds at that high amperage like that, you can actually get that puddle formed. As soon as you dip it, it's going to cool it down a little bit. You move, you dip, you move, you dip, you move, you dip. This 3/30 second rod cools that puddle down enough to be able to bridge that gap and get over that gap and be able to fill that in proper. So we're going with the 3/30 seconds. I blew the hole in the 1/6 up there because I was using a 1/16 rod, and you just can't feed it in fast enough to get that to go. Plus I had the clearance effect way too high on that one, so I was getting way too much cleaning, and it just heated the surface up. So we're gonna go with this one. I got my welder set up, my camera set up here. I'm gonna go ahead and click it on. So I'm gonna start well outside this hole. If you couldn't tell, I started out with some really good welds, and like I said, keep in mind, I am very new at the aluminum welding. So I got to this point right here. Let me get my pointer. I got to this point right here and I dipped my tungsten into it. So that's where I lost my penetration, but right over here, I got really good penetration. So I'm gonna go, let's check my tungsten out. I'm actually pretty good. Let's just go ahead and reset it. And we'll try to feather that out a little bit. I'm gonna clean it up one last time, let it cool for a little bit, and I'm gonna come across this backside and try to feather it out a little bit. What happened is I got a little bit too far away from it right here, so it started to kind of just puddle on top of it. So let's go ahead Run a bead across that backside there. There we go. What I did towards the end there, and I got a little pocket hole right here, I'll go back in and tack that up real quick. I'm gonna go home and just fill that little hole in right there. Okay. So there's one hole right there for you. It's not the prettiest, not the best, but that will seal. Don't get too close. That should seal up pretty well. I'm confident that that's going to be a decent weld. Now, the one thing I will do afterwards, I'll take my cleaning rig here, I'll clean that up, and I'm also going to go through it with some JB weld, marine weld. What this is going to do is if there's any porosity in here, if there's any impurities, there's any tiny little microscopic holes in here, the JB weld is going to form a thin layer over that, completely seal everything else up. This is 99.9% sealed for sure. This is just your extra saving grace on top to just go ahead, put a thin little layer on there, clean in all the tiny little porosity imperfections that you couldn't see, sand it nice and smooth, and it's going to give a nice little solid edge on it, and ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and weld these other two holes up, and then we're going to get to this nasty old crack up here. I do have a nasty crack that we have to get repaired, so we'll go ahead and repair that. So the important thing to do when you have a crack, which we got right here, is you have to drill the ends of it out. If you don't drill the end of that crack out, it's going to spread. You got to relieve that tension on that on that crack, or you're going to go right through your crack. So I got a 1/16 drill bit, I believe, and I'm just going to pick the end of it, which looks like it's about right here. Yeah, it's like right here. Oh, see how thin that metal is? That's where I'm going to do that one, and then this one. Yeah, that should be good right there. Thin. That is some super thin aluminum right now. As you can see how I just banged through it. So what I'm going to do on this one is I'll start where it's a little bit thicker, and I'll wash up into that. Probably start on this side and wash into it. Just try to fill that real thin stuff in there so we can strengthen that rib up. That is really thin metal. So this metal is just paper thin. You can't stop the blow through. I just can't. Ah. All right, oh, look at my hair. Oh, pretty. So here's the weld so far. Now, not the greatest. I never claimed to be 100% welder. I just started welding aluminum about a month ago. So oh, let's get the repair. So we got that right now. I'm pretty happy with it. A couple little booger there, but that's a pretty solid weld. I'm happy with that. That, I believe, is just another pinhole. I built it up. That's probably about 6 passes where I just kept building on it, building on it, building up, build that rib up, because that rib is thin. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the grinder that I showed before. I like to smooth it out. I'm like that. I want it to look as natural as it can possibly look. So I'll weld that, I'll grind that down, get it nice and smooth. It's built up nice and good. And then I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. So we're done with all the welding. I'm going to go through this back patch here. Was massive, and honestly, this was the part that I practiced on. So I blew a fairly large size hole out of there. So this one for sure, I do want to have some JB weld back here just to make sure. I got a good build up on it, but cautious. So I got my little bit of JB weld here. This is a reusable container, so I'm just going to squeeze out a little bit here. Equal amounts. Put my reusable cap back on, supposedly. It's probably going to JB weld it together, though, honestly. Start mixing those two together. I used to work with a guy that loved JB weld. Man, if he got to pull out the JB weld, he was super excited for the day. I'm just going to go ahead and put a nice thin even coat over the weld parts. Like I said, this is for all the voids and the crevices that may have happened. Porosity, anything can happen on a old bolt like this because of the welding aluminum on these is not easy because of that, how dirty it can get. So there, we'll let that dry a little bit. I may put a second coat on it. I don't know. I think I'm just gonna let it dry, give it a quick sand to smooth it off, and that should be good to go. I'm not gonna do the back ones because I got pretty good coverage on that one. I may end up doing just that front rib. I'll take you up there and show you that real quick. I built up the rib as best I could. It was super thin. That was just we were blowing through that one really fast. I got really good penetration on it. I'm not too concerned about it, but I'm going to, to make me feel better, I am going to put some of the marine JB weld on it, just to make sure we don't have any surprises out on the water. But I'm pretty happy with that repair, to be honest with you. But it doesn't hurt. I'm not putting on a real thick layer. I'm just putting on a real thin coat of it. And pretty much what that thin coat is doing is just, like I said, getting into any pores that may have been left in there that's open to the boat. It also doesn't hurt on this one because this is obviously a very high wear area up here. So good, let that harden up. And then we'll sand that before we paint it. Little brush up. By the way, this little scraper came with my brushes. I think it's pretty cool. Oh, almost killed myself. So the rest of the welds that we did, so here are the rest of them. Should have sanded that one a little bit. So these are the 3 weld we did. These 2, I got lazy and stopped welding them. Stopped grinding them. And then here's the last one that we filled in right here. So that's the last one that filled in. All the other ones were replaced with brazier rivets, and then they had the 5200 put around them. So the boat's ready. It's ready to water test. The back two here, I'm going to go through. These were 5200. I wanted to do a little comparison on here, so I did the 5200 patch. There's no welding on this one. This is just a piece of aluminum, 5200 marine adhesive sealant, and then I just sealed around it, and we'll see how that works. This is welded, 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 welded. There's been a little bit of a change in how we're going to sell this boat. Because we're so late into the season, it's November already, so we're getting pretty late into the fishing season. Really not the prime time to buy a boat right at this point in time. And we thought we were going to be able to flip it a little bit sooner than this one, but you know, life just gets in the way. So what we're going to do, I'm going to keep working on this. Next thing we're going to get the trailer in, and we're going to do the trailer. We're going to get the trailer set up. We're going to get the boat all ready to go besides the paint. And I'm going to fish with it for the next couple of months. We're going to take this out and put it through the paces, see how it works, see how it goes. I want to see how those two patches actually hold up. If by the time we're ready to sell it, I'll grind those off and we'll go ahead and weld them, and then we'll paint it. But I do want to see what's the difference. Is it better to weld them? Is it better to 5200 them? So we're going to take this out and pretty much beat on it for a good winter here. I'm in the south, so I can fish all summer long. I go out in the boat December, January, February, March, the whole time. We'll probably put this up for sale April-ish, April, May next year to get this up and sold, so we'll get it painted then. We might get it painted sooner, I don't know, but I really do want to stress test these two just so you guys can see how they will hold up, see how the welds hold up, see how those welds hold up, see if there's any, if we have to redo any of those welds because of that grinding on the concrete. So that's about it. It was a fun experience. One thing I do want to tell you guys, and this is really super important, I never welded aluminum before this. Good, bad, or indifferent, however it was, I think they turned out pretty well. You know, for the comments, if you have something in the comments that I did wrong, could have did better, by all means, please put it on there. But keep in mind, this was my very first time welding anything aluminum, and on these little thin John boats, it's pretty hard to get those going. So don't be scared to do it. Don't be afraid to do it. Just jump in and start trying it. That's how I blew that hole out right there. And I'm telling you, that hole was big. I mean, I had a chunk out like that. Really took a while to fill it in. Because of that is why I really started researching, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to do? You know, the difference between your clearance effects and your amperage. Just remember, the cleaner your weld, the cleaner your aluminum, the less clearance you need on it, the less cleaning action you need. The reason why you have cleaning action is to make sure you get it clean. If you get an actual down to that base metal, get all the oxidation, get everything out of the way so you can actually weld on it. So the cleaner you can prep it, the lower you can put that clearance. The amperage is based off of the thickness of your boat, but don't be scared to get into that. I had to keep this right around about 65, 70 amps, sometimes tickling 80 amps in order to keep that arc solid in there and to keep it moving. So play with your machine. They're all different. They all have a different feel. Don't be scared to try. It's all in the learning experience. I'll put a link to all the stuff that I bought in here in this video. I hope it helped. I hope you got something out of it. Stay tuned. We're going to get that trailer in, marry this to the trailer, and then get it going. Maybe we'll even see my son try welding, because we want to try arc welding on that one. I got a trailer out there. I want to move the axle back to the Pelican. I want the Pelican axle moved back because the tail wags the dog when I'm driving down the road with that one. That trailer just goes. So we want to get that welded, but first we want to get this married to that trailer we have out there, and that's the next video we'll do. Until then, put your comments down in the below, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. We're almost there. I'm at over 900 subscribers right now. I really want to drive up to that 1,000. So if you're watching for the first time, hit the like, hit the subscribe. It's going to help out. Until then, happy welding, fishing, whatever you're doing. Talk to you later.